Thanks for the privilege of your time. This is the SALVANT report on the 4 Diaspora Haitian Network. My name is Le Grand Parisien Salvant. He has arrived without much fanfare on Thursday, August 12, 2021, considering as one of the most important days for the next decade of American politics. The U.S. Census Bureau released the data for all 50 states, and that all 50 states will use to redraw their political maps. The U.S. Census Bureau released the data for Census 2020. It was late due to COVID-19. But the 2020 census provides a once-in-a-decade picture of the U.S. population, which is used to address a variety of social, political, and public policies issues. A census is a key tool for government, useful for efficient economic planning and creating relevant social policies. It is also publicly available data, meaning anyone can use it. What is the U.S. Census? The U.S. Census is the process of gathering information about the U.S. population. It primarily measures the country's total population plus additional demographic data such as race and immigration status. There was a time when it was only for U.S. citizens, but the census these days also includes illegal immigrants, long-term visitors, and other non-citizens. One of the main reasons why the census was creating some trouble before and after the release of all the data is just that in 2019, there was a Supreme Court decision. The 2019 Supreme Court decision in a case called Common Cause versus Rucho. In that case, the Supreme Court said for the first time that federal courts could not do anything to stop lawmakers from severely manipulating districts for political purposes. 2019, the Supreme Court said that the federal court could not do anything to stop lawmakers from severely manipulating districts for political purposes. And here we are today in what we call the gerrymandering. Le président américain, selon certain analysts, that because he is very unpopular and his policy very unpopular, therefore he sparked a national sprint to redistrict when he asked a Texas Republican to draw 5 more congressional seats for the GOP in their state ahead of the next year's election. In response of that, Democratic and Republican leaders in at least 7 other states have said they are open to moving their political line in the fight over the U.S. House, but that means very different things in different places. That's what we call gerrymandering. And what is gerrymandering? Gerrymandering happens when the boundaries of a district for an elected representative are manipulated to favor a particular party or group. It's typically done by packing a group of voters into as few districts as possible, or by cracking a group by spreading voters thinly across several districts to limit their ability to elect representatives of their choice. States, we got 50 states, are in charge of withdrawing district boundaries for their representatives in Congress and their state lawmakers, but there are some federal guidelines set by the U.S. Constitution. Yes, federal guideline. However, we just talked to you about the 2019 Supreme Court decision, and in that decision, the Supreme Court said for the first time that federal court could not do anything to stop lawmakers from severely manipulating districts for political purposes. What's going to happen in the fight now between Texas and California that has started withdrawing their political map? Now, this sparked because the president had asked, and some analysts, political analysts, say it's just because he's so unpopular and his policy are so unpopular, and the way he's handling the Epstein file, that he think in order for them to stay, to have the majority in the House or the Senate, they have to do the what we call the redistricting. And because of that, we have eight other states that want to get in that fight. First, we talk about Texas, which is in the center of the fight. Redistricting Texas, the center of the fight. And it's far from over. Governor Greg Abbott has vowed to pass a new congressional map ahead of the midterm at the president's request. We heard about the Democrats fleeing the state. They're leaving the state and spreading out around the country in order to put the Republican in a situation where they couldn't vote for the redistricting maps. And not only that, immediately after that, we have 8 entangled states that's going to get into the fight. We're not going to be able to get in details of all the states, but we give you an idea and tell you about the state. We have Texas and then California. California, with the governor Gavin Newsom, he has signed into law a plan, a redistrict plan, in order to, as a response to Texas, and he's going to call a special election on November 4th for the public, for the people to vote on his plan. And Governor Newsom, with the support of Democrats in the state legislature, redraw California's congressional map to help Democrats pick up 5 additional U.S. House seats. The state legislature has reconvened on August 18, and this guy had until August the 22nd, meaning yesterday, to place a redistricting measure on the ballot, and which they did. And we have some Republicans who started the fight in Texas at the asking of the president, and some pro-democracy advocacy group who opposed to Newsom's gambit. We can understand that. But for some people, they say the Republican cult, with the cult leader in the White House, they don't hear anything except brute force. We get to Texas, we jump to California, and the next state is on the line, that's Missouri. And Missouri could go back this fall to carve up Democratic Representative Emmanuel Cleaver's Kansas City's base district. If they convene, and they could go back and do that. And contrary to some assumptions, Republicans have the ability to transform Cleaver's district into a solid Republican seat. The fight is on. And Missouri Republicans have been upfront about their motivation. They really want to prevent Democrats from taking over the U.S. House. Now, we're done with Missouri. What would happen to Ohio? Ohio is the only state due for a mid-decade redraw of its congressional line. He hasn't done that. Remember, we said at the beginning in the introduction of our program that August 12, it was a Thursday, 2021, was one of the most important days for the next decade of American politics. Why? It's just because with the data released by the U.S. Census Bureau on that day regarding all the 50 states, now the state can use the information to redraw their political maps. And that's what we are witnessing. What now? The gerrymandering, the fight is on. Texas started it. Governor Newsom responded. And now we have Ohio. And Ohio is the only state that is due. He hasn't done that. Because in 2018, reforms required both parties to agree on the map, which they didn't. Therefore, they didn't do the last redistricting cycle. That's the reason why national Republicans are eyeing Ohio for gains of 2 to 3 seats. They got their eye on Ohio. Gerrymandering, the fight is on. And the Ohio Constitution, as I can recall, and you know that every state has its own constitution. Every state has its own a Supreme Court, its own legislature. So therefore, the Ohio Constitution says a 60% majority of the legislature must pass its redistricting plan by the end of September. That's what the Constitution in Ohio said. That 60% majority of the legislature must pass its redistricting plan by the end of September. And if they cannot come to a consensus, the Ohio Redistricting Commission takes over, and they would be the one to make the decision. Or if the commission takes over because 60% majority of the legislature cannot agree on the map, on the plan, we must understand that the commission includes 7 politicians and heavily Republican. The fight is on. We get to Texas that started the fight of the gerrymandering, redistricting plan. California, via Governor Newsom, responded, and he has his own plan now, ready to put on the ballot on November the 4th, and he's going to call for the special election. Then we got Ohio, who in 2018 couldn't do his because the parties, Democrat and Republican, they couldn't agree on the redistricting map. Now you have New York. New York want to get a little bit of the game. But the thing is, as you going through all the states, the New York State Constitution prohibits gerrymandering. Prohibits gerrymandering. And specifies that redistricting takes place once a decade. Only once after the release of the U.S. Census data. Once. Or New York has done it. So someone will have to successfully sue to invalidate the current map to begin the process sooner, according to the state Senator Michael Gianaris. The state constitution, we're in New York now, prohibits no. Gerrymandering, it must be done only once in a decade, or it was done. So in this gerrymandering fight, New York can only get in if someone sue the commission or the legislature to invalidate the current map that they have now. Because when they have the map, it lasts 10 years. So what are the Democrats in this fight are going to do themselves in order to get in? What they did, we have a Democrat from Queens. He has introduced a resolution to amend the state constitution. Amend the state constitution. All constitutional amendments need to be passed by 2 successively elected crops of state lawmakers and then approved by voters. We have trouble for New York now because the process couldn't be completed until 2027 at the earliest. and we have the mid-election 2026. However, the governor, Kathy Hochul, who is a Democrat, she said she's exploring all her options. What kind of option does he have? We don't know. One thing that we know, she said she wants to abolish the state independent redistricting commission. And this way, it will give more control to Democratic leaders. They will, because we have 19 Democrats and 7 Republicans in the state U.S. House delegation. Will the governor, Kathy, be able to do something before 2027 or before the 2026 mid-election, which we saw that the Republican cult with the cult leader of the White House, thinking that they are so unpopular, they must grab power. And in order to do that, we got to go through the gerrymandering. And Texas has started it, California responded, and we got other states that will be able to get in the fray. We got California, Missouri, Ohio, and then we just talk about New York. And we got the Illinois. Illinois with the governor, Pritzker, and this governor continues to leave the door open to redistricting the state congressional map, as he has hosted more than 24 Texas House Democrats in Chicago. He said it's possible last Monday. He said it's possible. But in Illinois, it's a tall order. Remember, if you don't know, let's see, Illinois has lost a congressional seat after the 2020 census due to population decline. And we have here some of the states who has lost some seats due to what they call the apportionment population. California has lost 1. We have Florida gained 1. New York has lost 1. And Texas has gained 2. Therefore, Texas wants to get more via gerrymandering. Now, if Illinois wants to get in the fray and change the redistricting map after losing 1 seat due to population decline, what's going to happen? A lot of political challenges. But what now? They have until November 3rd, that the congressional candidate have until November 3rd to file to run in their district. So, a new map would need to be approved before then. What is the governor of Illinois is going to do? Mr. JB, let us know. JB Pritzker, that's the governor of Illinois. And until now, we saw that the Illinois state lawmakers don't seem on board yet. don't see him on board yet. And one House Republican leader, Tony, doesn't think that Pritzker has the political power to force it. Nothing Democratic supermajorities have already stemmed a couple of his legislative priorities. He doesn't think, that's the Republican, that the governor, JB, has the political power to force it on even its Democrat friends. The gerrymandering, the fight is on. The fight is on. And that's the reason why we come here on the SALVANT report to explain to you what's going on right now with the election next year. Who is going to get the majority in the Senate or the U.S. House of Representatives, whether it's the Democrat and Republican. And you can see what now, after almost 250 years of democratic experiences, the U.S. is almost becoming a banana republic. And just because we have only one, you got the executive, we got the legislative, and we got the judiciary. Three branches of government. But now we can tell just that we got only one branch of government in America. Because the president does whatever he wants. Fired people illegally and constitutionally. And nobody says anything. When you come into a country where the law cannot protect you, where the Supreme Court cannot protect you, the judicial system cannot protect you from the abuse of one man, arbitrary decision, you plainly in a banana republic. What Indiana is going to do? What Indiana is going to do? Well, what we see is Article 4, Section 5 of the Indiana Constitution limits, it put a limit, redistricting of Indiana's map for the state legislature to the year or two after the decennial census. So that means they must be done the year or two after the census. Or the census was 2020, was late due to COVID-19. The data was released on August 12, 2021, 4 years ago. Now, this guy needed to do that 2 years. Have they done it in 2022 or 2023? We never know. We don't think so. But the state law that limits redrawing Indiana's congressional district line to the first regular legislative sessions after the census, though the Republican supermajority could more easily change that than the state constitution. Alors, we have Monsieur the U.S. Representative Frank Morvan, a Democrat. He's one of the legislators who could lose his seat. Call on state GOP leader not to ban it in. And he said, no matter what district they put me in, I will fight for working class people. I will fight for working class people. And we have talked about all these states that want to get in the fray in that fight, the gerrymandering. And let's tell you again, so you can follow us, what is gerrymandering before we finish our little talk. gerrymandering happens when the boundaries of a district for an elected representative are manipulated to favor a particular party or group. Manipulated. Or we talked to you about that 2019 Supreme Court decision called Common Cause versus Wichita. And in that decision, the Supreme Court said, for the first time in the history of this country, that the federal court could not do anything to stop lawmakers for severely, that's the key word, and manipulating district for political purposes, which is that exactly what Texas is doing. And nobody is going to be able to stop them. And if they go to court, the U.S. Supreme Court said in 2019, no, you cannot do anything. And what Texas is doing is manipulating the gerrymandering system process in order to get 5 more seats so they won't be in the minority. Knowing that if everything's left the way it is, because they are so unpopular, they won't be able to win the election and gain the majority. Now we're going to come to our favorite state where we station for diaspora here in Florida. What is the State House Speaker is going to do with a governor who wants to be president? In Florida, the State House Speaker, Mr. Daniel Perez, is forming a select committee on redistricting, putting his group together. He said the group will focus on questions surrounding the so-called fair district amendment in the state constitution. See, in election in America, you got the federal laws, you got the Constitution of the U.S., and you have 50 other constitutions, one for each state, and then you have local laws. All these come to play for election. And now, in Florida, that's what's happening. The speaker form a committee, a commission, a committee. However, in that state constitution in Florida, we are in Florida now. Come on, we are in Florida. The amendment that were passed in 2010, after the census 2010, the amendment prohibit political gerrymandering and specify that a district cannot be redrawn to deny minorities the ability to elect representatives of their choice. So what is Governor DeSantis is going to do? What is the Speaker of the House, Mr. Perez, is going to do when these guys have amended the Constitution of Florida, the state constitution, and the amendment that were passed in 2010 prohibit political gerrymandering and say that, hey, a district cannot be drawn to deny minorities the ability to elect representatives of their choice. So the Republican governor, DeSantis, is pushing to split up a North Florida district held by a black Democrat. You know he's racist. And he wants a new map. This way, if he split up the North Florida district, knowing that it's a black Democrat, he's a racist. You know it. Governor DeSantis. Under the new map that the Republicans are fabricating, and Governor DeSantis is forward, they were successfully in winning that seat, the seat held by a black Democrat. However, last month, the Florida Supreme Court upheld, last month, the Florida Supreme Court upheld the political boundaries and found that the old district likely constituted race-based gerrymandering, violating federal equal rights protection. The old district likely constituted race-based gerrymandering. The Speaker of the House, Mr. Perez, thanked and said that the committee that he just formed will look into it. And the governor told reporters last week that he thinks other parts of the current congressional map of Florida could have similar racial gerrymandering issues. What are they going to do? If he thinks the one map that the Florida Supreme Court upheld, and then he said that some other congressional map have the same issues, the gerrymandering issues. The election have consequences. For us in Haiti, when we decided, we have chosen to elect Sweet Mickey instead of Madame Maniga, we see the consequences. Election of consequences. We have Haitian pastors with the fundamentalist American. They have almost every Saturday held meetings to push people to vote for the president. And now we see we are living the consequences. Elections have consequences. In Texas, by example, congressional districts generally have similar population. In Texas, of each of the state 38 congressional districts, they have to include 767,000 people. And the Voting Rights Act, in some cases, has protected the creation of minority majority district. But experts said, scrambling to withdraw congressional district ahead of midterm election could hurt voters by undercutting their voice, causing confusion or creating distrust in the political system. If you give voters a reason to think that the political system is rigged and that it works against them, and that it's political elite that are essentially crafting the outcome before votes are cast, well, then, you know, guess what? You're going to have a low voter turnout. And that's not helping democracy. Thanks for the privilege of your time. There was the SALVANT report with Le Grand Parisien Salvant on the 4 Diaspora TV Haitian network. Thank you.